I think that most persons are interested a little bit in trying to find out the roots of their own individuality. A great many, of course, do not really care. They take life as they know it for granted. They do not really ask the meaning of it, or the cause of it, or the consequences of the careers they live. To the great majority, life is accepted as a period of vitality and is concentrated in this structure that we call the human body. So this morning we want to see if we can learn a little about the person or relation between the outer world in which we live and the cause within ourselves. We want to know something about the person abiding in the body. Now, we know that man is a very complicated creature. We know also that the dweller in the flesh lives in a very impermanent and almost ineffective physical structure. Very few persons have the energy, the faculties, or the integrations necessary to fulfill their own ambitions or aspirations. They work hard over a period of years and find the body gradually failing them. All of these circumstances do not seem to result in any great study of the matter. It is all sort of taken for granted as part of the passing situations through which we all must pass. Let us then say to ourselves, in this material world in which we live, what part does the human being play in his own existence? I think we must admit that he plays a very important part. All of history, all of society, all of the experiences and discoveries of knowledge are all due to something inside of the human being. Civilization is nothing but a long shadow of something inside of the person. We have something inside of ourselves that built the pyramids, wrote the sacred books, waged all the wars, created all the art, and in addition to these major achievements, perpetuated the species itself with an infinite diversity of individualities. We also find that this being in the body doesn't function the same in all bodies. There is a great individuality here. As a result of that, the living thing in each of us tangles with the living things in others and result in turn in stress, strife, discord, and hatred. How do we understand then the way in which to approach the problem of what is inside of ourselves? Actually, we cannot turn our powers of comprehension inward. We have tried it, and some claim a measure of success. But for the most part, when we turn our conscious attention to the source of our own consciousness, we are stymied. We find that instead of finding answers, we find speculations. Each individual seeking the internal part of himself ends in speculations. He is not able to actually penetrate into the machinery of his own inner life. Having no fortune in this respect, therefore, it is necessary to do what we can. And one of the things we can all do is estimate, as far as possible, our own inner lives. We can interpret the conduct of other people, but we seldom correctly interpret our own. We express our attitudes of acceptance or rejections to the thoughts of other people, but our own thoughts we more or less drift with, going along with patterns that are often unreasonable, conflicting, contradictory, and may in some cases dangerous. So, let's see what would happen if we try to find out a little more about ourselves. I think perhaps Plato, quoted by Philo Judaeus, made an interesting statement, namely, that which goes into the mouth of the individual is material sustenance, but the best that comes out of the mouth in the form of speech can change the course of history. Therefore, nutrition is a private business. Expression, vocally, is a public concern. Each person, whether he realizes it or not, has a subtle determination to influence other individuals. He wants his own thoughts to be accepted by those around him. Nations expect their policies to be accepted by the rest of the world. Each person, however, is contriving to communicate his own inward feelings about matters and cause these to dominate the lives of other persons. So we have this problem of trying to estimate, if we can, what this power is inside of ourselves. Is it something that is unique to humanity? Do other creatures have this power? Is it something that evolves? Is it something that is bestowed by a power outside of the body itself? Is it a chemistry set up by the integration of the body? Is it largely dependent upon heredity or environment for its moldings? Everyone has at some time or another attempted to answer some of these questions, but for the most part the answers have been conjectures. The actual problem of finding the real answer remains elusive. So we must try in our own way to see if we can find out why we think the way we do, why we believe what we believe, and how from this source within ourselves has emerged a consummate ingenuity by which we have filled the world with an infinite variety of manifestations of one energy power. Actually, we start in by the problem of energy, because whatever is in there is active. It is like a cell or a battery. It has power in there. Now, this power itself maintains all the other functions, and in the body primarily keeps the activity of the heart going through the length of our lives. This energy, however, is not necessarily the source of our opinions. It is rather the source of the machinery which makes opinion possible. It is also rather obvious that we are not completely dominated by heredity. We are not all of us dependent upon our ancestry. Actually, if we look down through history, we will notice that most outstanding and illustrious persons have come from humble backgrounds, and in turn, their children are comparatively humble. The power of the individual is not conferred upon his descendants, nor did he limit himself, or was he limited, by the comparative inabilities of his ancestry. Each of these units, which we call selves, is tremendously individual. Now, there is, however, a certain problem to bear in mind. We have to try to understand the computerizing processes by means of which the individual gradually becomes an almost universally functioning creature. How is this accomplished? We look at education and we find that it is ineffective. And more there is a complaint from within ourselves that the education we are receiving is frustrating the purposes of that which is locked inside of our own natures. Therefore, education is not giving expression to this individuality, but is directing it forcibly into courses which are perhaps inconsistent with its basic patterns and purposes. There is also something else that seems to come out as we go along. There are two levels, apparently, of people. One of these levels is composed of persons who accept and obey the pressures of the environment without question. Whatever is done by others, whatever makes life more simple or convenient for themselves, they follow. Then there is another group, a smaller group, which does not accept these limitations, but strikes out to find expression or to solve problems that challenge the inner life. Now, the only place where the solution to the problem can be is within the individual. But most persons do not become aware of problem-solving powers, except to a very limited degree. So we start looking around, trying to find out how this person, this being in the body, functions. And the first point we come, of course, into face-to-face contact is that this power, whatever it is functioning through a body. It is a body which is a kind of house. And in this house, the being in the body lives, or exists, or functions. It is not only an occupant, it is a creator. It not only maintains bodies, but it fashions and modifies them. And this being seemingly is forever attempting to move the body structure into harmony with the purposes of the inner life. In other words, what the being in the body wants is that the body will serve its purposes. And one of the main problems we have today is a serious complex in this area. In other words, we are now trying to give to the body or to the personality that authority or that consideration which duly belongs to the being in the body. In other words, instead of the body becoming the useful servant of the being, it is now very largely a tyrant or a jailer, determining according to its own pleasures how this being is going to function. Under such conditions, we have a lot of conflicts in life, manifesting largely in the fact that individuals, forced by circumstances to accept patterns or conditions which are not according to the inner life, become frustrated, neurotic, and psychotic. The individual who is unable to use the body for the purpose of the being in the body is always at a disadvantage. Now, the body itself is a reasonably useful structure, but environment, world conditions, and many modifying factors are now greatly disturbing the proper relationships between the functions of the body. We find suddenly that this garment, which was supposed to be a useful working vehicle, has become incapable of its original purpose. And beside other circumstances, it has fallen a slave to vanities. It has allowed the person in the body only the privilege to do what the body wants done. Now, the body expresses through its own level of function by what we call appetites. These appetites are pressures in which the body wishes to do as it pleases. One of the major byproducts of these pressures is